What is up, my YouTube family? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, then it's just welcome to my channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button because you will not be disappointed unless you just don't like nice things. And if that's the case, it's okay. It's a couple more of y'all out here. Check the dislikes on the video. That's about how many of y'all don't have good taste. I'm so glad it's quiet in here now because just a couple minutes ago, before I hit film, before I hit record, y'all's niece and nephew were running rampant in the background trying to tear each other's legs off. Fortunately for me, like a lot of y'all, they found my voice to be soothing. And I like to read my notes out loud, so it's like really fresh on my brain. And they can't take it. They just are out with the minutes. Y'all, I had to get rid of the wigs for a minute because I'm tired of having to do my hair. It's really annoying. I want to be able to just get up and go. Today's story, as you can tell by the title, or maybe not, because YouTube sometimes will demonetize my video just based off the name alone. So if you see somebody's name and it's just the first name and the last initial, it's because nothing in the video goes against the guidelines and it's perfectly fine and suitable for ads, but the name is what's the problem, and so I have to take off the last name. It's crazy, I know. Crazy and annoying, but that is why. So today's video is about a lady by the name of Amy Archer Gilligan. Amy was born on October 31st of 1873. Little Halloween baby. This also makes her one of the very first Scorpios. Now, you know how it goes with the earlier models of anything, child. They don't be quite right, them test models. So because she was one of the earliest models of the Scorpio, we cannot accept this L in good faith. I'm so sorry about it. Amy was born in Milton, Connecticut, the 8th of 10 children. It's a whole lot of them. She was described as being a very bright and loving child who, despite her being one of the youngest, spent most of her time when she was not in school at home caring for her other siblings. Sis was a little caretaker. I would say she had an old soul job, but she was born in 1873, so quiet as it's kept, she probably had one of the first souls fresh out the pack. Amy's help was needed in the home, though, because unfortunately, one of her siblings suffered a nasty little fall from the second store window of their home and was paralyzed as a result of the accident. Another one of her siblings suffered from an unnamed mental illness, and so they also required a lot of care until they were ultimately committed into an asylum when she was just 13. Now, whether Amy truly has a nurturing spirit by nature or her circumstances just required her to operate in that space is unclear. But she does not complain about her role in the household. She appears to actually enjoy it. And it is ultimately what she gravitates toward for work when she's an adult. At the age of 29, she marries a man by the name of James Archer, and later that same year, the two welcome a daughter. They were kind of struggling financially, and both of them wanted to work, but of course, they needed a job that will allow them, or at least Amy, to work and also be available to take care of their daughter. So when the opportunity arises for them to be full-time caretakers for an elderly widower by the name of John Seymour, it's perfect. Both of them can work, both of them can be together, and all three of them can be together as a little family while they work. In 1901, they accept the position. All three of them move into the home with John, and between the two of them, give John around-the-clock care. Unfortunately, though, just 3 years later, in 1904, John passes away. The young couple has nowhere to go at this point. They don't know what they're going to do for work. But because they have been so good to John over the last couple of years, his heirs decide that instead of putting them out on the street, they'll rent the house out to the Archers, allow them to continue to stay there, and allow the Archers to use it as a care facility for the elderly. Honey, they name it Sister Amy's Boarding Home for the Elderly, put their little sign up, and business is going well for them. Everything is working out exactly how they needed it to. They're available for their daughter 24/7. They are doing something they're very comfortable with and love, and things are great. That is until the owners of the home decide, you know what, we no longer want to rent to you guys. We want to sell the house and just be done. Now, Amy and her husband, they didn't like that very much because this decision now leaves them without income or a place to live. And Amy is particularly upset at the fact that they're able to just do this on a whim simply because they are the heirs of his estate. Fortunately for her and James, they had saved up a little money. They weren't out here blowing money fast. They had a little nice, cute little nest egg. It was not much and it wasn't enough to buy the home from the Seymours, but it was enough to get them into another home in the same area that they could use as the same type of business. But this time they make it a little bit different. Instead of it just being a care facility or a retirement home for elderly people, they also would care for people who were very sick or people who were disabled. They named it the Archer Home for the Elderly and the Infirm. They also decided to raise their prices some. So now they are charging between $7 to $25 a week, or you could pay $1,000 up front for life care, and they'll just take care of you until you die. Now keep in mind, this is in 1907. So that's a lot of money for back then, because when I did the inflation calculation on this money, in 2021, that would be a range of $204 to $728 a week, or a flat rate of a little over $29,000. They were making some money, child. In addition to the agreed rates, they also pressured their residents to add them as the sole beneficiary on their life insurance policies. It was not a requirement, but they did try to, talk you into it and suggest that you do it. And they said that it was because they wanted to make sure that your finances are easily and properly managed after, you go on to the other side. This was a complimentary service. They're doing you a favor, actually. Now, some people did agree to this, mostly people who didn't have any other family. But those who had family in other states were not really going for this. They already had heirs to whatever fortune that they were going to leave behind, and people who would get their affairs in order. They didn't need the complimentary service. Now, Sister Amy, she is attending church weekly. She is very known in... Now, Sister Amy, as the locals called her, she attends church weekly. She was very well known for making these very generous donations to the Catholic Church, very involved in the church, and looked at as a pillar of the community and a saint amongst the girls. Amy's reputation for being very nurturing, very motherly-like, it was a reputation that followed her from her childhood well into adulthood. A lot of people gravitated toward her. A lot of people trusted her very easily. Amy was just that little lady in church that could do no wrong. She was just so sweet, so kind all of the time. So when her residents began to die quickly, not long after moving in, and without any signs or warnings that they were at the end of life, no one thought much of it. Nobody gave her a second eye or a little side eye, none of the things, girl. They just thought that the people were unfortunately passing away. Considering the fact that most of her residents were elderly, they just chalked it up to old age. There are never any signs of foul play, so nobody really suspects that she has anything to do with anything. That is until one of the residents has a family member come to visit, and they find that their relative is being kept in extremely unsanitary conditions. This actually results in them suing the Archers and winning $5,000, which in today's time is a little over $145,000. Now, around the same time, another resident inside the home also began to complain about their conditions, but unfortunately for this person, they did not have family members who were there who could come in, step in and fight for them. It was just them. So when they begin to complain about their conditions, the Archers are like, oh no, baby, see, we can't shell out another $5,000. We cannot have this happening. This is the last thing we need in our lives. So instead of letting it escalate or giving it time to turn into something bigger, Amy goes and has this man committed to an asylum, signs him over to an asylum and says the man has issues upstairs, child. And he literally has no one to step in and keep this from happening. The following year, James Arthur, which is, of course, Amy's husband, he becomes tragically ill all of a sudden, like out of nowhere. Now, within weeks of him becoming sick, he succumbs to his illness and passes away on February 10th of 1910, which was conveniently for Amy just a couple of weeks after she had taken out a life insurance policy on him. Now, as shady as this seems, his COD is attributed to kidney disease, which he showed no signs or symptoms of having any kidney problems. He was never diagnosed with any kidney issues prior to this. And now little widowed Amy is running the business all by herself. Just her and her baby. Amy takes the money from her husband's life insurance policy, invests it back into her business, and does not skip a beat. Miss Girl continues to run it as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, her residents are still dying at an alarming and almost predictable rate. Now, the town coroner was a really good friend of the Archers, and so either he genuinely did not believe that there was any foul play going on with all of these bodies he is receiving from Amy's house, or he did not want to bring any trouble to the Archers, and so he just turned a blind eye to it. Who knows? But with each incident, he never notes any foul play. Most of them are attributed to either old age or for the people who were young and disabled. It would be ruled as some other form of natural causes. 3 years after losing her husband, Amy decides that it is time for Mama to get back out there and date. And she sets her eyes on a very wealthy man. Just like Amy, he had previously been married and unfortunately lost his spouse. And so he was eager to love again, and he wanted somebody to share his life and his wealth with. He meets Amy, and the two of them fall for each other really fast and really hard, child. The two become inseparable, and Michael does not hesitate at all to invest in her business and spend most of his time there at the business helping her. He loved him some Amy. He was completely enchanted by this woman and decides to marry her only months after they had begun dating. But unfortunately, not long after this, on February 20th, 1914, very eerily close to the date that she had lost her first husband, her brand new second husband suddenly, unexpectedly dies. And child, his COD was determined to be severe indigestion. Child, is indigestion out here killing people? Because I have had it too, and I never knew that my life could have potentially been in danger. It felt like I was dying, child, ain't gonna lie. But I didn't think I was really going, I never saw the light or anything. Like, is that a thing or not? Anywho, again, as with most of the people dying down to Amy's house, no foul play is suspected, and so they don't really look into anything any deeper than that. Now with Michael, he had 4 children from his previous relationship, but it turns out that right before his death, his will had been altered to make Amy his sole beneficiary. Now, Amy had convinced most of her residents to pay the $1,000 up front for life care, but she was only successful half the time in convincing them to also list her as the sole beneficiary on their insurance policy. However, just because they would disagree with it up front, that didn't mean sis gave up. She continued to try to pressure them and convince them to change their minds. She would also pressure them to make bonus payments to her. Some of them would make these payments and give her additional funds. Some of them would not. 61-year-old Franklin Andrews was one of those who would not, and who had also opted out of signing over his possessions and adding sis to his will and all of the things. He was like, oh no, baby, I have family out of state, and they will take care of my estates once I cross over. I don't need your little complimentary service, ma'am. And even still, she continues to pressure him to change his mind and reconsider. However, he has a sister out of state who is set to receive all of whatever he has left over once he is no more. And so he is not willing at all to budge on this. He and this sister actually talk frequently. Not long after he has this conversation with his sister, informing her that this was going on May 29th, 1914, Franklin suddenly dies from what is determined to be a gastric ulcer, although he was seen gardening just 2 hours before he was found. And he had also just spoken to his sister again. He mentioned no pain, no symptoms of having a stomach ulcer, child, not even the slightest bit of discomfort at all. And so his sister was not buying it. Sis knew that something was up. Meanwhile, people are continuing to die within Amy's home. And it is not just elderly. It is people who are as young as 30 years old suddenly dying months after they signed their life care contract. Franklin's sister had gone to the authorities with her initial concerns, thinking that something was suspicious about her brother's passing. and they kind of just brushed her off. But she continued to keep her eye on Amy and the rates at which people were dying there. She is convinced that something sinister is going on in the Archer home. When the local police brush her off and do not take her concerns seriously, she escalates it to the local DEA's office and pleads with them to look into it. But again, she is brushed off. Nobody does anything about it. They're like, girl, it's an old folks home. Like, people die. But she had vowed not to rest and not to give up until she receives some form of justice for her brother. Now, let me just paint the picture of how bad this was. Between the time that Amy and her husband moved into their second home and started their business and the time that her husband died, 12 people had died. Since her husband's death, 48 people have now died in her home, in her care, within months of signing their life care contracts. When the local authorities are not listening to her and not willing to take her concerns seriously, she decides, you know what, since y'all won't listen, I'll just take it to the media. She had been pressing the local authorities for over a year now, and she was tired. She was tired of them brushing her off. But when she goes to the newspaper with the story, they actually listen to her and they run an article that they titled The Murder Factory. This got a whole lot of attention. It got a whole lot of people talking, and it was actually the first article. Several other media outlets picked up the story and also reported on it. It was snowballing, out of control. This was the push that finally made authorities kick off an actual investigation into what was going on down to Amy's house. Now, tragedies are expected in nursing homes, especially when, you're dealing with people who are at the end of the road, child, waiting on their little ride to heaven or hell. Let's just be honest. But 60 within that time span was significantly higher than all of the other retirement homes and care facilities. Like, it was outrageous. Now, once they get their investigation going, they also find that many of the people who had died suddenly had just either given a large donation of money to her, had just signed her as the sole beneficiary of their life insurance policy, or had just made some form of complaint to their family about being pressured for money. And that was not the only thing that came out in the investigation. Just days before her second husband's death, she had purchased 10 ounces of arsenic. And if you know about arsenic, baby, a lethal amount is like 0.009 ounces. It don't take much. Why you need 10 ounces, Miss Mamas? What are you doing? Which is pretty much what they ask her. And when she is asked why she needed it, she tells them that she had rats and she needed to get rid of them. They, of course, do not believe this, so they exhume him. They also exhume Franklin Andrews, the guy whose sister was hell-bent on getting justice for her brother, and 3 other people who had suddenly died around that same time frame. When they test them, they find that they had all been poisoned with either arsenic or strychnine. And it is also revealed, child, all of the things were coming out. This, of course, leads them to look into a motive as to why she would, do what she had done for her husband. They look into his last will and testament and find that it was not in his handwriting at all. Amy had actually forged the documents, making herself the beneficiary and leaving nothing to his 4 children. After a year-long investigation and, receipt collecting and talking to people and getting witnesses and all of the things, Amy is finally formally charged and arrested for ending these people's lives. They had only charged her for the 5 that they exhumed and tested and could prove were poisoned. Now, Amy goes down to the courthouse and she pleads not guilty by reason of insanity. She said she was not all there. She could not be held fully responsible for all of the things, girl. Maybe some of them, but not all of them. And her lawyer actually is successful in getting 4 of the charges dropped against her. The only remaining charge being that of Franklin Andrews. When the news breaks, the locals are stunned because nobody suspected that Amy was down here doing any of the things. They thought that she was just this nice, sweet lady who was not capable of doing any of this. Especially when it comes out that the motive is the insurance money, considering how frequently she gave these huge donations to the Catholic Church. Greedy was the last thing they saw sis as. They felt like she was so giving. They had always thought of her as being very generous, very opposite greedy. But I guess they didn't really consider that's where sis was getting all the coins from to donate. Her trial wraps up, and on June 18th of 1917, she is found guilty and sentenced to death. She does appeal the conviction, citing that she does really have some mental issues and it's not fair. And she is actually granted a second trial. So 2 years later, trial 2 begins, and during this trial, her daughter takes the stand and advocates for her mother, saying that she was not in her right mind. And not only that, she had been a morphine addict for several years prior. And because of this, she should at least be granted some leniency. Child. With this second trial, she again enters a not guilty by reason of insanity plea, and she maintains the fact that she was not and is not in her right mind. Now, the jury really doesn't care much about her little addiction or any of the things, girl. They still find her guilty, but instead of giving her the death penalty this time, they just gave her life. Now, 7 years into her sentence, I don't know what sis was in there doing, if she was in there licking on the walls and windows, I don't know. But she does manage to convince them that she is mentally impaired. They declare her to be insane and transfer her to the Connecticut Hospital for the Insane. Amy remains in this asylum for 38 years, child, until hell just calls her home in April of 1962. Her COD, natural causes. Sis lived to be 88 years old. That's a long time. You know what I think? I think sis in that corner might have had something going on, and that's why he was turning a blind eye to all of the things. He may have been her true love and equally sick and twisted and deranged in the head and into all of the things. Now, I don't know that to be true, but it's just my little speculation. Someone should have definitely looked into him. I honestly do think sis in that corner had something going on. I just don't feel like he's 100% innocent in all of this. But I could be wrong. And as always, I want to know your thoughts. Let me know down below what you think about this whole case. If you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It helps mother out a lot. Share this video with a friend. As always, I appreciate you so much for spending your time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace. Now, whether Amy truly has a nurturing spirit, no. A lot of people gravitate, what? And they find that their relative is being kept I can't. My little baby is so cute down there. Oh my god. Her head is so big. Like, Bella is nothing but a head and a belly. Michael was also a widower. Wait, is that what you call him? No foul play is suspected, and so he is just buried. Bella is just chilling at my feet listening to the story. Girl, get out of grown folks' conversation. Now, Amy had convinced most of her relatives, and where's my moisturizer? Now, Franklin's sister had gone to the authorities with her initial suspect. Bella, mommy, get your butt away from that trash can before I jack you up and black your eyes. Okay, let me stop for somebody from P to watch my video and report me. They also exhumed Frederick Andrews. Okay, his name was not Frederick, girl. The disrespect. It was not in his handwriting at all. Amy had actually forwarded. No. They thought, what was that?